Hello. You're muted. Still muted.
Oh my.
How are
Yes.
you?
Well, I'm doing really well. It's been a
Good,
good
good.
day. Got a few things done, got some rest, went out for a nice lunch.
Lovely.
Yeah, so it's been really, really nice. Yeah.
Good, good, good.
So my goodness, today's the day. I can't believe how fast all this time is gone.
So fast.
Yeah, really. Yes. So looks like we've got a few people on, which is great. And
Yeah.
well, Sam isn't going to be able to be with us tonight, right? Uh,
No, but I'm thinking, oh, I see some people I know. Hi, Felix.
well, that's great.
Um,
Hello,
Hi, Tamar. How are you?
I'm fine. This webinar is very interesting for me. I am Tamar from country of Georgia, not
Uh-huh.
Yes.
US. Yes, and I'm working on media literacy since 2011.
Wow. Well, thanks for
Yes,
joining.
Oh, yes.
yes, and the topic is very interesting because in my country, step by step is strengthening the use of media literacy as a tool of security, etc. That's why I'm participating in this webinar.
Oh,
Well, excellent.
I'm so glad you're joining.
Hi,
Yes.
Michelle.
Hi, Professor. How are you? Thanks for
I'm
joining.
good. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Your book has been incredibly helpful in my planning of this, and I plan to plug it.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you. It needs plugging. Always needs plugging.
Well, so does media literacy. So
Yes.
we're really grateful that you included it because so often it's overlooked and yet
Yeah.
it's so important.
Yeah. No, I'm a big fan. I think it's the future, and the more I the more I think about it, the more important it is. In fact, I want to write something just about media literacy, and your theme today is a matter of national defense. I think is very well taken.
Mhm.
Yes. Well, Tessa is in Brussels right now on a Fulbright NATO scholarship
Uh,
because NATO has made media literacy a strategic defense objective.
very good. Very good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and so that's been encouraging because, media literacy has really survived as a grassroots movement, and nothing survives without the grassroots. But we also need the top-down policymakers to really be more familiar with the concepts and with the whole idea around media literacy. So it really does help a lot to um, have some of the policymakers looking at this and trying to decide how they can incorporate it in their work. So, yeah.
Have you talked to any of your Finnish colleagues by any chance? Of course, they're not members of NATO, but uh,
Right.
they I consider Finland to be the most advanced country in media literacy by far, and a lot of lessons that they provide that should be taken seriously.
Oh, I agree. And in fact, right now I have a really dear friend who's a researcher from Finland who's visiting me. But you're right, NATO doesn't include Finland. And so I've got a bit of a challenge there because I definitely want to highlight best practices. And Finland offers many of those. But but at any rate, I'm more focused on NATO countries. So I think I'll probably be able to reference it at some point, but not really emphasize it as much as some of the NATO countries. But
Yeah,
yes, I hear you.
yeah,
They've had a media literacy strategy when nobody was even thinking about it except them.
right, right.
Hmm.
Um, Hi everybody, sorry for coming late.
Hi, Auntie.
Michelle, did you check that you can share your screen or let me know if you want me to use
Let
my
me
screen.
check that now. I should be able to. Share screen. Interesting.
Should be able. Yeah, all participants can share their screen.
Okay, it's giving me an interesting share screen. Share. Allows you to share your screen in preferences. And now it's giving me a security and privacy thing.
Oh dear.
Again, I have the presentation. I can share my
Yeah, I think that's how we did it last time with Monica's presentation. Is that correct?
Doesn't matter. I'll have it ready, and you can just tell me to.
Okay, let's do it that way, just to, because I don't know why I'm having this. I've done it before.
That's fine. Don't
Never
worry.
fails.
Never fails.
Yeah, I always tell teachers I'm working with, technology will always fail you. So, just.
Yes. Well, that's why I sent it. I sent it. I emailed it to myself. I created all these backups.
That was wise.
Yes.
Okay. So. Yeah.
Will
Okay.
Renee or anyone, or you be
Yeah.
doing an introduction, or do I just start?
I think Tessa is
I'll be
Tessa's
introduced.
going to do it. Okay.
Tessa is our host of the whole series. So whenever you want, we're at exactly the hour. If you want to wait, we have a lot of participants. It's really
Okay.
up to you.
All right. Well, I think if we already have a good number of people, we might as well get started then. That'll give more time for discussion later, which is always fascinating. So I'm Tessa Joels. I'm president of the Center for Media Literacy, and I'm really thrilled to be here this evening. This is the third of a three-part series that we've had on media literacy as a national defense strategy. And this evening, I'm really proud and pleased to be able to introduce Michele Johnson. And Michele owns her own company, Ignite Global Good, which is an affiliate of the Center for Media Literacy. And Michele was really our first affiliate. And I'll never forget meeting her in a coffee shop in Northridge, California, which turned out to be a very fortuitous meeting. And Michele is a graduate with her master's degree in public diplomacy from the University of Southern California. So she has a really great perspective on this topic, and one that I know is valued in major organizations because, for example, in NATO, the media literacy efforts are pretty much centered in the Department for Public Diplomacy. So Michele, I'll let you take it from here, but really glad to be here. Thank you. And thanks for everyone being here.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Tessa. We can go ahead and start the slideshow, which is in Yonti's capable hands. Here we go. So we're going to talk about media literacy as public diplomacy. Just a few things I want to say up front is some of this is centered on the United States. I know we have participants from around the world. So I want to be sensitive to that. And in the discussion groups, if you are hearing things where you that are possibly different or the same, bring in your own perspectives. I think that exchange is so important. So go ahead and flip to the next slide. So Tessa went over a little bit about who I am. My company, Ignite Global Good, is a strategic communications, public relations, and marketing company. So I come from a long background as a message maker. So that's my perspective, as well as a human rights advocate. My master's degree is in public diplomacy from USC. Annenberg School of Communications and Journalism. So that's basically what qualifies me to bring these two worlds together, the two worlds that I love. I am an affiliate for Center for Media Literacy. You heard from Tessa Joels. She is a modern pioneer of media literacy, exceptional work. And I'm so proud to be a part of her organization, be affiliated with it. I'm also a media literacy trainer and workshop leader. So I've been doing that since about 2017. And my paper that I co-authored with Tessa is called Media Literacy, a Foundational Skill for 21st Century Democracy. And I thought I'd bring that paper up. It was in the 2018 June, I believe, Hastings Law Journal. And so much of what's in that paper has to do in some way with what we're talking about today. Next slide, please. So we come from a variety of backgrounds, so I'm going to give a little mini course on what public diplomacy is. And the truth is there are many definitions, but the core concept is that public diplomacy is the way in which international actors advance foreign policy, not by engaging one another, but by engaging with a foreign public. And that is an example, and some examples I'd like to give you are international cultural events, conferences, the Sister Cities program, if you're aware of what that is, foreign students in study abroad programs, and visits by international opinion leaders and artists. Essentially, what Tessa is doing is part of public diplomacy, being a visiting scholar from the United States in Brussels. If you think of when countries send their artists to other countries, it is a form of public diplomacy. The big thing last night was, oh gosh, I get these initials wrong. BTS, the K-pop band, sold out a huge stadium in the United States. It's a Korean boy band. So all of these things that may be familiar and maybe you're not thinking of it as public diplomacy do fall under that umbrella. Next slide, please. So there are different types of public diplomacy, and this comes from a book by Nicholas Cull, who's another professor of public diplomacy at USC. The foundation of public diplomacy is listening. You can't create programs that can provide that are effectively influencing publics without listening to who they are, what interests them, what doesn't, learning about those cultures in that way. So all of public diplomacy lays on at least good public diplomacy, lays on top of a foundation of listening. And in media literacy, we can compare that to the concept of knowing your audience. Advocacy is where the international communication comes in. Think of it as a promotional activity to an international audience. This is where we have international communications and embassy press relations, anything that is advocating. Cultural diplomacy, which is one of my favorites, making cultural resources and achievements known overseas. And an organization that is an example that does that is the British Council. Here in Los Angeles, you can take classes in Turkish because the Turkish ministries have set that up. Other areas of cultural diplomacy, one that I love is food. Some people use the term gastro diplomacy. Some people don't like that term, but anytime you taste the food and share a meal with people from another culture, food communicates so much. You're getting a taste, not just of the food, but of the culture itself. So cultural diplomacy. Another type is exchange diplomacy. And that's basically what Tessa is doing right now. It's sending students and professionals overseas and accepting them in reciprocity for learning and cultural purposes. International broadcasting, that the definition of that has expanded. It's the use of technologies such as radio, television, and internet to engage with foreign publics. When you think of Radio Free Europe or Voice of America, this is international broadcasting as it applies under public diplomacy. But now we have the internet. So we'll talk more about that, how that has really, that has expanded things. Now, this last one, I created even my slide a little bit of space there because it is adjacent to public diplomacy, but some people do consider it part of it, and it's psychological warfare. Now there are different terms for that now, the name of it is changing, but it is an actor's use of communication to achieve an objective during wartime, usually through direct communication with the enemy's public. An example that I have used in a lot of my studies is back in Voz de la Liberación, was an American psychops activity in Guatemala in the 50s to overthrow the Arbenz administration. They created music and very entertaining content that also had pro-American themes to it. And it was circulated as freedom fighters who were deep in the jungles broadcasting. It was really created by CIA operatives in Ocalaca, Florida, and flown by night. So that could be considered a psychological operation. And even the countries that have reputations for the most, benevolent countries have some form of this. Next slide, please. So who practices public diplomacy? When you think about traditional diplomacy, you think about actors who are government to government, ministries, embassies, people within the government, the State Department. Public diplomacy is, in one part, governments directly to foreign publics, but not only that. Non-state actors also can practice public diplomacy by communicating with foreign publics. For example, NGOs. An NGO in one country may want to solve hunger problems or fill medical needs by communicating with a foreign public for donations or participation in programs. There are also malicious actors that are non-state actors that communicate directly to foreign publics. If you think of Al-Qaeda and ISIS, who communicate directly with foreign publics for recruitment purposes. And citizen diplomacy, whether we know it or not, when we communicate with people from foreign lands, we are representing our nation in some way to them. So that could be when you're traveling. It could be when you're studying abroad. Citizen diplomacy, I think that citizen journalism falls under here because we no longer only get our information from gatekeepers. We now also get information. Anybody with a Twitter account or a phone can communicate or write and gather attention. So that is all part of citizen diplomacy. And the next slide, please. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the United States State Department and what they are doing, some of the things they are doing around media literacy right now. Again, those of you from other places who are on the call may have other activities and other information to add about what's happening in your country. But for foreign service officers, those diplomats who are posted in countries around the world, the Foreign Service Institute training catalog includes many classes that have media literacy aspects, But media literacy itself is not a required discipline. It's included in some other required courses. So I'm thinking to when Monica spoke last time about what's going on in the United States military branches, I think this sounds kind of similar. It hasn't been created as a specific subject, but it is weaving its way in. The other thing that I found that was really interesting is American Spaces. Now, the Office of American Spaces is part of the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs at the US State Department. And their purpose is to foster mutual understanding between the people of the United States and the people in countries around the globe. And these are actual spaces in other nations where people can come to learn about the United States. They can learn English language. There are topics such as STEM and entrepreneurship that are popular in promoting economic development in developing nations. They learn about American culture, society, the values of the United States, and American Spaces actually has a complete unit on media literacy and countering disinformation. There's a toolkit. So one of the benefits of the American Spaces is it allows for direct audience engagement at the core and provides the US government with influential opportunities to counter disinformation while creating a positive impact on how the US is understood and viewed around the world. For example, in the Ukraine and China, American Spaces counter disinformation with media literacy campaigns and workshops that show journalists, students, and other members of the public how to recognize hoaxes and push back against inaccurate reporting. And this media literacy and countering disinformation resource toolkit is designed for programming in American Spaces. But it is also available to the public. It's designed to increase participants' awareness of disinformation and their media literacy skills. And it contains things like best practices, links to lesson plans, videos, games, fact-checking and news sites, and online courses. And if this works for me, I can probably put the link, I did it, in the chat if anyone is interested. And next slide, please. So as we go into our breakout groups, the discussion question I want you to think about is, in what other ways do you think that media literacy can make the work of public diplomats more effective? And consider governments, non-state actors, NGOs, and citizen diplomats. So we'll give you, what do you think, Yanti, 10 minutes to discuss this? And then we'll come back and maybe have a few people share what they learned or spoke about.
Okay, so I'm gonna open it up, and then people could move to the breakout room. Here we go. And if you have any issue, let me know. I can assign you to the rooms. So 10 minutes, and we'll come back. If anybody has issues getting to your room, let me know. If anybody needs help to move to the room, just let me know, and I can help you with that. Philip, Huida, Isabel, Felix, Jonathan, Martina. Let me know. Salome, can you hear me?
Hello?
Hello. Um, uh, do you need to be? I
No,
put you in room number 2. Do you see it? Let me
no.
try to see here. Now, can you see it?
Okay, I see.
Martina, do you see the invitation? Jonathan? Felix, I don't know if you see. Oh, okay. No problem. So we have 6 more minutes and then people will join back and we'll continue. Hello. Hi Sarah, can you hear me? We're in breakout rooms for 5 more minutes. I'm gonna put you in one. You don't need to join. It's if you want to. And then we're coming back in 5 minutes. Here you go. So if you want, you can join that. So everybody's going to join us in 10 seconds. Here we go.
So I hope everybody had stimulating conversations. And is there anyone who wants to talk about what your group talked about, or any insights?
Okay.
There's one. Kim? You need to unmute.
Sorry about that. We thought that your question was very interesting in that how can media literacy help diplomats? And the question that we kept coming back to was, who do you trust? Because there is such a lack of trust. So when, even now that somebody's teaching us media literacy, we have to ask ourselves, who is teaching it and why are they teaching it and where is it coming from? And we didn't come up with a lot of answers. We came up with a lot more questions about how is this going to happen? And somebody asked, where is the red line between the disinformation and the question of who's telling this to me? And we were laughing that there is no red line anymore.
That's a really good point. Media literacy teaches people to ask the right questions. That is not a panacea. This is not about risk elimination. It's about risk mitigation. So somebody who is taught media literacy, who has that skills, has that education, they're not going to be perfect. You don't put a cape on them, big S, and they can't be fooled. But they're more capable of asking the right questions. And in media literacy, we don't want to be directive and say, this is who you trust. We want to teach publics how to ask the right questions and make in the right ways and come up with wise answers for themselves, because we're all different. That's not going to be the same for everybody. Anybody else come up with insights or more questions?
Dr. Sieb, would you mind sharing your insight? I thought it was so informed and telling.
Well, my point, and it really links into the comment of the person who was talking just when we got cut off and sent back his name there, is that it's both the media literacy and public diplomacy are both very hard sells to funders, particularly. You go to the U.S. Congress, for example, or I imagine to parliaments and ministries all over the world, and say, we want money for public diplomacy because we've got this project of bringing young people over to the United States, let's say, and in 20 years it'll pay off when one of them becomes prime minister. Well, the funders are going to say, why should we gamble on something 20 years down the road when we could use this money instead to build a nice jet fighter that could blow up all those people, which is sort of the essence of American foreign policy over the years. But it is a hard sell. And media literacy, the point that was being made about sort of the shrinking of democracy, if you look at some of the recent elections, actually in Europe and in the United States, when the idea is the government should not be involved in telling parents what the schools are going to teach, something like that. And so it seems to rest, that argument seems to rest on the premise that parents know better than anybody else, but the parents are often the ones who are media illiterate. And so it again is going to be a difficult sell when there's this whole, the emphasis in the United States involves education related to race. But I think it could also become an obstacle when the media education is related to disinformation and just honesty. And we see that even today in the news reports, there are stories about disinformation regarding COVID, disinformation regarding this latest variant. And people are going to die because of that disinformation. They're not going to get booster shots. And that becomes a significant issue. So put on your armor when you go forth on this crusade to try to get this message across.
Yes. Thank you for that. Here's my armor. We are armed. So let's go back to the slideshow. And the next slide. You just heard from Professor Sieb, and this next part, I relied heavily on a book that he recently published that I highly recommend. It's called Information War at War. It covers information war, journalism, disinformation, and modern warfare. It brings up concepts about the fact that war outcomes are determined by more than just bullets and bombs, the weaponization and militarization of information, and this idea that in the future, a great part of warfare may be fought via information rather than traditional combat. It does include a chapter on media literacy and what role media literacy plays now and in the new era. And this book is all under the foundation of it is a historical context that is very, very interesting it allows us to see where we've been and where we are now and where we may be going. So I wanted to say that a lot, give credit where credit is due. Next slide, please. So I'm tying all this to national defense right now, and much of war, if not all of war, is about power. And there are different kinds of power. So I'm just going to go over there are others, but these basic concepts. Soft power is the power of attraction versus persuasion and coercion. So it is shaping the preference of others through appeal and attraction versus coercion through what was traditionally thought of as military actions. This is where a lot of public diplomacy lies, in this power of attraction. What makes a country attractive? To come up with a simple example, why do people want to buy Italian suits and German cars? This is not something that is coerced. You're not forced to think that way, but yet these countries have, through their actions and their promotions, created a power of attraction. So that's basically soft power. Hard power is the use of financial incentives or military strength to influence the behavior of other entities. That's where traditionally we think of where the military lies. Smart power is a strategic combination of soft power and hard power. It stresses a very strong military, but also uses soft power ideas like forming alliances and partnerships. So it's really that combination of using both soft power and hard power intelligently. And sharp power is, that's come out in a newer idea, and it's controversial. Some people don't really think that belongs in this same thing, but I think in what we're talking about, it has a place. Sharp power is the piercing or penetrating of the information environment of a target audience by manipulating or distorting information that reaches them. This can include efforts at censorship, the use of manipulation to reduce the integrity of independent institutions, and creating kind of what Kim was talking about, this lack of trust. Often this will take advantage of some asymmetry between free and unfree systems. It is where authoritarian regimes both limit free expression and distort political environments in other democracies. So they're shielding their own domestic population, at the same time influencing more free countries abroad. An example of that is China and Russia have tried to manipulate or co-opt culture, education systems, and media to influence democracies. And next slide, please. So in media literacy, we talk a lot about representation. And it's really a core foundation of media literacy is understanding that media is a representation of what it is showing, writing about, creating images of. It is not that entity itself. So I'm going to talk just a few moments about the media representation of war. Media has an enormous power to determine whether or not publics are in support of wars. Just to give a brief historical outline, in the 1940s, World War II, there was radio. And Edward Murrow told stories in real time from the battle zones, which influenced public opinion in the US about entering the war effort. It broke down, or helped to break down, that isolationism that was common in the United States at the time, because those graphic words and sounds stirred the emotions and the intellectual thinking of the American public. In the 1960s, sometimes the Vietnam War was called the living room war, because about 90% of US households at that point had televisions. And that reduced that space between battlefield and the viewer. Seeing and hearing these seemingly endless war, graphic, grisly images, pessimistic reports from the media and from those that they interview, that is part of what gives rise to doubt over official policies. In the 1990s, what is called the CNN effect, some of you may or some of you may not have heard that term. And it's the theory that continuous coverage of major events on TV can influence domestic and foreign policymaking agendas. And what's different from, in the 1960s, you had to wait until the 5 or 6 o'clock news to get the information, where once these 24-hour news cycle stations came out, like CNN, it was a complete bombardment. You could watch it 24 hours live in real time at almost, if not any time of the day. This molds public opinion, and it can shape policymakers' decisions. The CNN effect had influence in the US invasions in Somalia, in Bosnia, in Kosovo, and these TV reports helped set the agenda at times because officials in the Bush and Clinton administrations had to react quickly to events that were dominating newscasts. And in the 2000s, we had the Twitter effect. That's when we can say war goes viral. And the difference is, as we know, with all of the radio, the television, 24-hour news cycle, there were still gatekeepers, there were editors, there were people deciding what is newsworthy. But in recent years, reports can come from anyone at any time, straight from the battlefield, to be seen all over the world. All eyes on ISIS, hashtag all eyes on ISIS in 2014, essentially announced the invasion of northern Iraq. And social media has, of course, empowered ISIS recruiting from over 100 countries. ISIS is what they're named. They're not a country. It's a non-state actor. And social media was the vehicle ISIS used to declare war on the United States. The execution of journalist James Foley, that was deliberately designed for viral distribution. So that is the new era we're in. Next slide, please. So I want to look forward a little bit. Military information support operations are an area where the military exists and they're planning on expansion. The objective is to convince the enemy, as well as neutral and friendly nations and forces, to take actions favorable to the United States and its allies. I'm going to take from Dr. Sieb's book. General Richard D. Clark, commander of U.S. Special Operations Command, recently said, "Great power competition is about influence." And there is, in the US military, a plan for expansion of this. They are planned operations to convey selected information to foreign audiences that influence emotions, motives, objectives, and reasoning, and ultimately the behavior of foreign governments, organizations, and individuals, that in a manner that is favorable. So essentially, military information support operations is a nonviolent force multiplier that is used within violent environments. It is persuading versus compelling. It relies on mental and emotional factors to promote specific behaviors, thinking, and action. It's going to rely heavily on experts who understand the subtleties of political, cultural, ethnic, and religious aspects, as well as what I said was the foundation of public diplomacy, which is listening to foreign publics through social media and analytics. And this is interesting because it raises some questions that, I'm not sure we have answers for right now. A lot of this is really soft power activity in the hands of an entity that is traditionally known for hard power. So it's interesting how this is coming together. I wanted to, before we go to breakout, I just want to see some of these. Seems like companies like Facebook are already engaging in sharp power. From Jeff, that's true. Yanti, especially with the social power they have, adjusting the algorithm as well as the financial power with cryptocurrency they're getting into. And from John Pettis, the US is less able to implement defensive sharp power compared to, say, China's Great Firewall due to the First Amendment. So we're even more reliant on education to lift up our population's resistance and inform the attack and to information attack. The problem is we barely teach any functional media literacy or critical thinking, so our population is easily manipulated. So true. Media, from Felix, has often been used for these purposes. There's a film of Teddy Roosevelt and his Rough Riders fighting in Spain over his policies in Cuba. Yes, a lot of this is not new. It's been amplified with our new information tools. So I want to leave enough time for our breakout groups. So the next, if you'll go to the next slide, then maybe if we have time, we'll go over some more of these comments. They're great. What role do you see media literacy playing in a new era of increased combat via information, persuasion, and listening? So we're going to give what, 10 minutes for that?
Yeah.
Are we
Let's
close?
say 8 minutes, so we
8
have some
minutes.
time at the end. Okay.
8 minutes.
So almost the same groups. I just changed a little bit. So, but here we go. So 8 minutes. See you in 8 minutes. Any of you, if you want to get to a breakout room and you cannot, just let me know. If not, you can wait and everybody will be back in 7 minutes. Hey Salome, can you hear me?
Yes, Yanti. Hi.
Hey, was there a specific room you want to be at?
Actually, I was on my way back to home, so I'm really confused. I just joined just to catch some final words and
Yeah,
ideas.
yeah,
So maybe I'm gonna stay here and I'll
okay,
just listen
no
the
problem.
summary.
Are you doing any better?
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. I'm just working and keeping myself busy, so it helps.
Okay, but at least
Thank
you
you for asking.
personally healthy?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
that's it's
Physically,
hard
I'm
to
just
quit.
asking physically.
Yeah, physically, yeah. Yeah, a lot of people around me they have COVID, but I already had my my portion of COVID, so I'm done with that.
Yeah, everybody's very afraid. It seems like it's
It's spreading fast. Yeah.
so. And your mom?
She's doing well. Yeah, she's also okay. She's also working and it just helps her. But my grandparents have COVID now, so we are monitoring their health now.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah.
Wow. Okay. Be strong.
But thank you for asking.
Sure. Thank you for your email. I didn't have a chance even to reply. It's been crazy here.
Yeah, it's okay. I know you're busy. So your parents are still there?
Yeah, for a month.
That's good.
No.
Yeah, it's really bad time for me because typically this is time when I go back from work to home and I'm either in the subway or in the bus. So it always kind of it's a barrier for me to join some meetings in the
Well, there's gonna
US.
be a recording.
Yeah, so yeah,
So
that's what I'm
not the
hoping for.
breakout rooms, but the actual full thing. And
Mm-hmm.
we're trying to see what should be the next step with, media literacy as public diplomacy, like what people would want. So
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a really nice series of talks.
yeah, very connected with what you're interested in.
Sorry, say again.
I said it's very connected with the work that you're doing and what you're interested in.
Yeah, it is. And I'm really big fan of Michelle. I don't know if you remember that we became really, I mean, I wouldn't say friends, we've never met, but we talk maybe once a month just to check on each other and ask so what we are doing in media literacy. So I was trying to be here today, but still
Michelle,
I
are you
was not.
talking about Michelle Johnson?
Michelle Tannen? Is it? Oh, Johnson. Sorry, it's Johnson. Yeah, it's Johnson. The one who is leading today's
Yeah, yeah,
session.
yeah. Michelle
Yeah, yeah,
Johnson.
it's Michelle
Oh,
Johnson.
okay,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah. So I was trying to be here, but
Okay.
I was not able. But I will watch recording and maybe send some few words after that.
Sounds great. Yeah, I gave them warning in like 2 minutes. I'm gonna bring everybody back.
Okay.
Cool. So work-wise, everything's fine.
Yeah, we are kind of summarizing everything we are doing here in podcast, in the media literacy project I'm leading, and I am already thinking of planning or doing something different from February, like offering some programs in media literacy. So because we are kind of summarizing these projects in February, this will be the end of the projects.
Okay.
But yeah, I think everything is going well. I learned a lot of things, and yeah.
Are you still planning on coming?
Yeah, I'm coming in December, and yeah, this will
December
be
is
a
in two
very
days,
tough
so
visit, but we'll see how it goes.
keep us posted.
Lisa knows about this, but I
Okay.
will update you.
Sounds good. And Lisa can update me as well. Oh, people will join us right now, and we'll continue just the wrapping up. I guess people are not coming back because they're very immersed into the discussion, so which is a good
Yeah.
thing. Mm. Wow, really? Nobody wants to come back.
Is Rene here as well, or it's
I
just
think he
you
was in the
from media?
beginning,
Okay.
so yeah. So this time is exactly like transition between work to back home. It's like early evening.
Yeah, it's 9 p.m. here, so
Okay. Okay. So seems like nobody wanted to get out of their breakout room and I needed to yank you out like with the Zoom more. So that's a good sign. But we do have like 5 more minutes. So Michelle, your microphone, we cannot hear you.
Yeah, I wish we had more time because I want to hear what the group spoke about. But my group, one high school teacher brought up such an interesting topic that they were teaching children right now media literacy, let's say more than in the past. This is, of course, United States focused. But what about people who are out of the education system? What about adults? What role does media literacy have there? Because it's going to be 40 years before we have a media literate public who's voting and making decisions and putting out content. And we talked about ways to engage adults. Somebody called it the Sesame Street for adults, and possibly through games, possibly through movies. But I think that that was such a great point. I wish I could hear from all of you. 3 more minutes. So there is so much online, and I hope that maybe we can keep the comments so that we can share them afterwards. Does anyone have any final, it's 9:57, like 90-second thing that they'd like to say about this? John?
So I arrived late, which is the tragedy of all tragedies, especially because my message is, when can we talk about this again? Because it is not going away. This problem is only going to become bigger and bigger, both domestically and as a national security issue, which is hard to believe if you spend all your time in it like I do. But it literally will only eat more and more of the attention pie of national security and also domestic politics and problem resolution. And so I think more convenings like this among people who are thinking and building solutions are in order. is my final
So
message.
I want to invite you and everybody else for the 2 minutes that were left in the chat. So the recording will be available, but also in the chat, since this is the not culminating, but the third last of this series that we planned. But we want to hear from you, and if you want to provide in the chat some feedback for us, and obviously via email to any of us, what would be helpful to continue in the new year from your perspective? Is it those kind of webinar? Is it a different way of engaging? What do you think moving forward would be something that you would like to engage in? So it would be helpful for us after having those 3 amazing talks. What should be next? And Tessa, also, I want to hear from you before Michele closes.
You're muted.
Well, first of all, I would really like to thank everyone for participating. I think we've just had wonderful participation, great and insightful comments, a wide variety of perspectives, which of course is so important with a topic like this. And I know Monica Hanley and Michele Johnson, who have both given presentations as well as myself. It's actually just been a real privilege to share about this topic, because it's one that isn't often addressed in media literacy circles. And in fact, when we first started talking about it, it was kind of like, well, how does media literacy even fit with defense? And so, given how important a topic this is, and especially with the recognition that media literacy is just beginning really to get with policymakers, I think it's all the more important that all of us in the practitioner community really understand what high stakes these are, and that we have a true contribution that we can make, and that our community really has something so valuable to offer that truly others don't in the education sphere. And so I would really like to encourage all of you to continue to follow these issues. And I know that our team at the Center for Media Literacy will. The Media Education Lab has been fantastic in sponsoring these webinars and working with us on this topic, and I know they're interested. So, I think we've gotten a ball rolling, and that's exciting.
Michele, any closing? And
I
I put the link for this, where this recording of this one will be, and I'll put the recording of the other 2 presentation as Michele is closing.
I just want to thank everybody for participating, for your insights and for your concerns and everything that you raised. Especially my little group came up with such great insights. And it was a pleasure. I hope you got some insights about public diplomacy and where media literacy fits and can benefit that, and your role in that. So feel free to reach out to me if you ever have questions on it.
So last, to just explain, I looked at the link. We didn't put the recording yet there. I think the best we would do a designated 1 page, so you don't need to go between pages and find all the recording. And we'll send to all the participants that register. We have the email from the registration. We'll send you the link for that designated page that will allow us to continue the conversation and get you posted about where do we go from here in January. So again, thank you very, very much. We appreciate it, and we look forward to those collaboration between the Center for Media Literacy and the Media Education Lab. Have a great day, evening, night, morning, wherever you are.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Have a good week, everyone.